Welcome to the Brilliant Humans podcast, where we celebrate extraordinary people. But here's the catch. No one is talking about themselves. Every guest is here to share the story of a brilliant human who shaped them, inspired them, or changed their life forever. They might be famous or completely unknown, alive or no longer with us. A teacher, a parent, a stranger, a leader, a friend. These are real stories, honestly told. Stories of kindness, creativity, courage and connection, because brilliance deserves to be shared. This is the Brilliant Humans podcast. Welcome to the show. For today's episode of the Brilliant Humans podcast, I'm so excited to be joined by Steve Shaw, co-founder and director of Stronger Wellness. From his humble origins of working in a toothpaste factory, Steve was able to turn his passion for sports, health and well-being into his career. And now that passion transcends both his professional and personal life. When he's not designing and kitting out commercial and home fitness spaces, he's likely to be found playing cricket, football and golf with his son, Luca. Steve is here to share the story of someone that, as he's got older, he's been able to appreciate how brilliant they are more and more. So let's dive straight in. Hello, Steve.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very intrigued about this toothpaste factory. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, it was probably the briefest of jobs you could ever imagine. But I had this really short period of time where I needed to earn a little bit of money before I went to Australia. And it was basically the only thing I could get very quickly. So, yeah, there you go.
It's so good to see you. This is actually the first episode where someone is talking about a sibling. So I've kind of just, sort of eased people in. But really, I'm so excited to hear about this because that's all I really know about who you're speaking about. So let's go. Who is your brilliant human and why are they so brilliant?
Well, my brilliant human is actually my brother, my older brother, Paul. He's 3 years older than me. And the reason he's brilliant it's not actually because he was a professional footballer. So he made it in an industry that we kind of all grow up wanting to be successful in. And he was a professional footballer, played for Arsenal, had a career that spanned, I think, about 19 seasons, played about 500 senior games, got about 100 goals, that kind of thing. So had a really, really good career. And that I think is in many respects brilliant in itself. But I think I've appreciated more the things that he had to do to get there, actually, along the way.
So, I mean, obviously, you mentioned he's 3 years older than you. You grew up sort of looking up to him as an older brother. But when do you think you kind of started to realise, oh, okay, hang on, he's got something here. He's a pretty talented individual.
Yeah, pretty early on. He was obsessed with football. He played it all the time. You could see as a kid he was very talented. And he was a really, really good player playing. And I guess you never quite know how good someone is. Anyone could be good at school, sort of thing, or playing. And even I was. But I think as you progress through, and I think he first went to got asked to go to Arsenal when he was 14, I think. And then you go into that environment and my dad and I spent years watching him, even at that time, and you could see he was good in that environment as well.
Because there was I read a book a few summers ago, and I can't remember the name of it now, but there was a crazy statistic, and it was about grassroots football, and it's something like in the UK, it's 0.04% of grassroots footballers make the Premier League. Yeah. And people assume, okay, you're 14, you signed for Arsenal, you've made it. But actually, that's not true, is it?
It's vanishingly small. Even when you get in at that age, I played for Arsenal as a 14, 15-year-old. I was okay, but I mean, he was clearly, on a different level to me. But what I was found interesting was, you see some players, and this is what we'll kind of get into a bit really, but you see some players at those ages, 14, 15, 16, 17, they're so talented, but they don't make it, and it's so difficult, and the margins are so fine. And, that's why I think people don't appreciate how hard it is. If you think about, people talk about competition in business. If you think about that as a competition of trying to make it in that kind of an industry, when you've got pretty much every kid in every playground who wants to do that job. The standard is incredibly high. And actually, when Paul came through at Arsenal playing, that was the time when a lot of foreign players started playing a lot more in the UK than they did previously. So whereas before you were trying to make it against the kind of local players or the players from the UK, he was all of a sudden then competing with players from all over Europe and all over the world. It became even harder, at that time. So it's very, very difficult. It's very hard.
So thinking about you guys were both at Arsenal together, or I'm assuming that's the case, because he joined Arsenal at 14, and then that was it, really, wasn't it? That was his career. So how was he as a big brother? Forget the footballing side of things. Was that strange, that relationship, or was he brilliant as a big brother?
We always got on great, and we still do. We're both fairly, I guess, relaxed personalities, and he was always great as a brother, and I guess sport was always a thing that kind of knitted us together, and when I was playing. I guess I was playing for Arsenal 14, 15, and he would have been starting full time at Arsenal as what it was a youth player then. When you're kind of 17, I think 16, 17, when you leave school, if you don't, probably still the case now, but when you were going to go to a professional club, you would leave school at 16 without doing A levels, and you would go straight to that club in preparation to try and make it as a professional. So you would try and get a professional contract from that. And again, the very, very small amount of those players that played then, they were quote unquote full time, but back then they literally got paid about 30 quid a week. Yeah. But very, very few of them, even got contracts.
It makes me think we had to buy a car last year because ours just died spectacularly, and I got talking to the guy who's such a lovely guy at the car dealership, and he said he was very humble, and he sort of said, I moved down here, and he was clearly from up north, and I said, how come you moved down here? He said, well, I played a bit of football. And I said, come on, who'd you play for then? And he's like, I play for Chelsea in England. And you go, what? And I looked him up. He was such a lovely guy. Alex was his name. And sure enough, he played for England under-17s, England under-19s, played for Chelsea. And then all of a sudden, the dream just ended. And so to your point, these kids are giving up school. They're going all in on this career. And still the margins are really hard. So thinking about Paul, he was one of the ones that he was one of the 0.04%. So what was the fine margin? What did he have that other people didn't?
I think one of the things that I've really grown to appreciate more as I've got older is the fact that, and I think this is very, very much lost, not just in professional footballers, but professional sport generally, is you've got these kids, really, they're kids growing up, they're 15, 16, 17. And at that age, when we're all trying to discover ourselves and make our way in the world and understand, life in itself, they've got to really be able to understand the things that they've got to sacrifice as a kid of that age, and the things that they've got to understand themselves, understand their game, and that kind of thing. And especially at that time, you were kind of on your own, in Paul's generation, doing that. And I think footballers in particular probably don't get the credit for that kind of emotional intelligence really at really, really young age. I definitely didn't have it. And I think one of the things that really filters players out is that they'll get to a stage where they get to where Paul was, 15, 16, particularly once they get to kind of 17, 18 and they're playing full time. They might have got a first contract. They're not in the first team, but they might have got their first contract. And that's where a lot of these players, they think they've made it. They think, okay, I'm a professional footballer and I play for Arsenal. And there's all the things that go along with that. As you can imagine, there's a lot. And Paul managed to separate himself from that. He managed to understand the things that he needed to do. And I think that was one of the big differences. And again, Paul played with some kids at that time. They were phenomenally talented. I mean, they really were, John. And they never made it. They just never made it, or they might have played a couple of games and never made a career out of it. And there's loads of players like that. So sometimes it's injury, of course, which is just bad luck, But I think that was the thing. He was just very, very single-minded about what he wanted to do, and he just understood what he needed to sacrifice.
It's funny, we had a previous guest on the podcast, Andrew Tilling, and he used the quote that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't want to work hard. And I think that's probably, that's probably where and where did that maturity come from Paul then? Because like you say, there is a lot of distractions, and I've got a few friends whose kids have gone to academies and stuff, and you hear about the distractions. We all, we read about them. It's the soap star girlfriends, it's the cars, especially now when they get the money very early on. So how did he manage to filter those things out?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the amount of times growing up when I was in a pub and they go, "Oh, you're Paul Shaw's brother, aren't you?" I had trials at Palace, but I discovered beer, and all that. Everyone's had trials at Palace.
Everyone's had a trial, right? Yeah.
I think he just single-mindedly wanted to do it and loved it, And again, you'll see players with talent, loads and loads of talent, but they maybe just don't have that bit.
Yeah,
and maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think you've hit upon something so important there. It's that never being satisfied with the result. And you see it in the great Ronaldo. I mean, Ronaldo could have retired years ago. So do you think now, looking back, do you think he's had more of an influence and impact on you in your later life when you've realised all this?
Yeah, I think when he was playing, he had a different influence on me. Some people would say to me, "Oh, aren't you jealous of it?" I was never jealous of him as a player. I always felt very grateful and very privileged that I could go to all these games and I'd watch my brother out there, and that feeling that you get when he scores a goal, and it's like no other. It genuinely is. That for me in the stands, let alone what it must have been like for him. He scored a couple of Premier League goals. Imagine that. So I just enjoyed that for a long time. My dad and I would go around to every game up and down the country, and played a bit overseas as well. And so that was different then. It was just an enjoyable, very fortunate experience that I had. And I think as I get older, and as we all get older and got kids, that kind of thing, and now I start to appreciate more those things, because if you look at it this way, so think back at those of you that are listening that are kind of old enough. Arsenal Football Club back in the 90s, particularly the early 90s, had a heavy drinking culture, and it wasn't the only club that was like that, but they were probably out there on their own in that respect. But when Paul was a young player coming through at that time, you can see how really easy it would be to get drawn into that. I remember once you start getting into the first team squad, you're training with the first team, all that kind of thing, and you get invited on these things and people contact you, it's really easy to get sucked into that. So I appreciate that more now, of what he needed to sacrifice and how humble he was, through his career. He was just he just behaved well, and it sounds like a very simple and a kind of an obvious standard, but again, a lot don't. You see a lot of players that kind of strut around, but I always, I'm his brother, right, and I'm his advocate, but I did think he always handled himself very well, and I think they're just good standards to have as a human being, really. So I appreciate that, certainly more as I get older.
Do you find yourself now, you run your own business, that is tough in itself. Do you find yourself drawing on Paul's personality and his success and as an inspiration for that?
Something I really like to think about, just as in a professional kind of context, is habits. You say about books and people you like. So Atomic Habits by James Clear is a book I love, because I think it really resonates with me, and I think trying to be successful in anything that you do, if you can get and craft really good habits, and keep to them, it makes so much difference. If you can habit stack, and I find it really has helped me in my training as well, in my physical training. Health and fitness is really, really important to me, always has been, and always will be, and habits are really key to that. And I think again, you don't become successful at anything without having good habits, and I think that's something that's resonated with me.
Yeah, you're so right. I took me a long time to discover the atomic habits and the 21 days it takes to form a habit. And once you do that, it does change everything, I have to say, because you're just not living your life in this kind of chaotic way.
Mm.
And you hold yourself accountable with these habits. So that's a great shout out, Atomic Habits there, nice one. So what happened? So Paul, he did the 19 seasons. That's a lot, isn't it? And then what happened then? What was the end of his career?
So he played up and down the country for many different clubs, and then he played towards the end of his career. He played a couple of seasons in Hungary for a club called Ferencváros. Actually, I think the biggest club in Hungary actually. And he really enjoyed that. And then he got asked to go to the US and play a coach for a new club, a new startup side in New York. And I remember he called me about it. He said, he had 2 little boys and obviously married and that kind of thing. So they'd done their thing in Hungary, come back to the UK, and he said, am I going to up sticks again? And he's talking to me about it. And I said, what have you got to lose, really? You can go. If it doesn't work out, fine, you just come back. You haven't lost anything. So, give it a go. If it doesn't work out, fine, come back. And he hasn't been back since. So he's lived in the US. How long has he lived in the US? I should know that. Maybe 15 years.
Wow. Okay.
Over 10 years. Initially in New York, coaching. So he's still coaching, still in the game. And then he moved to Orlando. They asked him to go down there, and he ran the academy. So I think about 50 oversaw about 50 of the academy teams for Orlando City, which is one of the MLS franchises for a long time. He left there last year, and now coaches in Cleveland. So he's still in the game, still loves it, still coaches, but coaches mainly younger now. Whenever I see him, I go and watch him coach.
You're listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast, where, here's the catch, no one is talking about themselves, only the brilliant human who has changed their life. If you've got someone you'd like to celebrate, drop us a note at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com. Not many professional footballers can transcend into coaching, particularly at the children or younger people, should I say. So what do you think the qualities of your brilliant human, Paul, why do you think that's worked for him? What are the qualities that it takes to be a great coach?
I think, actually, I'll tell you a quick story actually on that. Just jumped into my head. Is I think any great coach or any mentor or anyone that's in that kind of a position of leadership or coaching, and particularly nowadays, whereas maybe in the past you used to be a bit more regimented and maybe a bit stricter, you've got to be able to be approachable for kids or players. And I remember being over in Orlando with him a few years ago. His team was playing and they played the game, and I was waiting for him afterwards, and this kid came up to him and he was sat there. Everybody had gone. He was sat there on the touchline, sat down talking to this kid for probably half an hour after the game, just one. And eventually he came over and we got in the car. I said, what was that all about? With the kid, and the kid, to his credit, just came up and said, "Hey, coach, I just want to ask you, what do I need to do to get better? What are the things that I need to improve? Help me out," sort of thing. So he just sat there with him for half an hour, talking him through the things that he needed to work on in his game, and that's all it was. But actually, Paul just sat there with him, and he'd obviously created an environment where that kid was comfortable enough to come to him and say, "Can I ask you a question? And can you help me with this?" And he obviously respected him enough to value his opinion as well. And Paul just sat there, kind of talking him through. And I guess that's kind of, not everybody has that, maybe, and that's kind of a little snapshot of what makes him a good coach.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just leadership, isn't it? It's creating that safe space. It's taking that time. It's man-to-man management. So many people would have gone, I don't know, see me, whatever, and then just palmed him off. But to sit there for half an hour, what a wonderful story. What a wonderful example. Have you ever fancied? I mean, you're a passionate sports person. Have you ever fancied coaching yourself based on what you've seen from Paul?
Well, actually, funny enough, again, I'll bounce you very quick. Sorry, I thought when I was a student, I toyed not for very long with the idea of being a teacher and being a PE teacher. And I
You'd
went
have
and
been great.
oh, well, I went and shadowed my old PE teacher at my school. And by that time, he'd been teaching for ages and he was completely fed up with it. And I shadowed him for a couple of days and he'd gone. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure I want to do this. And so I didn't do that. Actually, now my son Luca is playing cricket. Unfortunately for me, he loves his cricket, which is great for me. And so I've spent this summer just gone coaching his under 10s. I'm a bit evangelical about the power of sport. Really, I think it's amazing. But I think ultimately, if you've got kids of that sort of age, success is that they're still playing sport at 15, 16. Even better if they're still playing it at 25, or if they're my age at 48 and they're still playing it. That's amazing. You know, that's what success is. It's not really about whether they're uber talented or they're gonna make it professional, that kind of thing. Because you know, sport is ultimately about meeting people, making great friendships for life, people that will help you. I mean, I've got friends who are still my best friends now, and they're people that have helped me and guided me through my life, and actually people that have, in many respects know a lot more than me, and I've been able to bounce off of them. So you know, I think sport is wonderful for that, you know, at any level.
And do you know what I said to someone the other day about kids playing sport? And do you know what else it teaches them, which I think is really important nowadays? Losing. I think there's so much, you know, participate and you know, we want it to be inclusive. We want everyone to, and I agree with you on everything that you just said. I completely agree. But I also think it teaches them about that life sometimes doesn't always go your way, and you're not always going to get your medal because you turned up. Actually, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose in the right way, and be magnanimous to defeat. You know.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, I think this season actually Luca played this because it's a bit inside baseball, but in cricket, when kids are growing up, when you bat in pairs. So when you get out, you don't actually get out. You get the opportunity to bat for 4 overs. You bat together and that kind of thing. So Luca's now at that age where you start playing games when you get out, you're actually out. And the first game that Luca played at that, he got out first ball, you know, walked off the field, and I wandered around and I said, mate, that's the game. Yeah. That's the game, you know, and you learn very, very quickly. And I think that's really, really important. You know, yeah. Kids in our team this season, and they've been crying and whatever when they get out, or it's really, really important. Yeah. Really, it builds that resilience in them that you don't get actually very, very, very rarely in other aspects of life growing up. So I couldn't, and resilience, really, it's resilience. You know, it's losing resilience. I'd seen some of our kids this season. They'll get out, they're in tears. 10 minutes later, they're bowling, they get a wicket, and they're over the moon. How do you bounce back?
My word, that resilience in young people and how that can actually help them. That's a completely separate podcast that you and I are going to have to do, because I mean, I've been talking about that a lot. I mean, talking about resilience and kind of coming back to Paul, I mean, surely you don't do 19 seasons without some resilience. Did he ever have any tough times? Did he have any big obstacles he had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, generally he was pretty lucky with injuries, and that is a stroke of luck. You know, there are some players, one of his best friends in the game, a guy called Ian Selly, who got into the Arsenal team at 18 and was doing really, really well, broke his leg against Leicester at Highbury, and still carried on playing, but probably never the same again, and drifted out of the game. Really, really good player. That's just unfortunate, you know, that sort of thing happens. So he was pretty fortunate with injuries. He didn't have anything too bad. But he did have times when he would go to a club and he wasn't in the side. I remember He went when he was on at Arsenal early on. He went on loan to Cardiff, didn't go very well. Crowd really got on his back. It's quite hard to watch from the stands, as his brother. But you've got to have that resilience to come back and believe in yourself, actually, which again is really hard. So there's loads of times that you have, particularly in something like football. We all know it in sport. You see it in all sorts of sports, don't you? You see it in every sport where you have a player that goes somewhere and they do really, really well. They go somewhere else and just for some unknown reason it just doesn't work out. Again, you just got, I guess that's part of being a professional sports person anyway, and you just got to have that resilience, which again a lot of us don't have. A lot of us just don't have. It's another one of those things.
Amazing, isn't it? Wow. I mean, not many people can talk about, having a Premier League footballer as a brother or a brother as a Premier League footballer. So, I mean, getting the insight that you have has just been so amazing. I mean, even brilliant people kind of sometimes get it wrong. In hindsight, do you think there was anything that Paul could have done differently?
I've grappled with this a bit. I know it sounds really bad, but I'm not sure really. I think one of the things that he possibly would like to have done more in his coaching is his coaching in senior football more. And I'm not sure about that, if I'm honest, because again, that's a very, very cutthroat industry to be in, and I think it's one of those things where you can think that's a great thing to get into. And Paul moved around a lot during his career, different countries, different places as well, which you tend to as a player. And I think and your family go with you as you've got young kids. And I think once you finish, to carry that on as a coach is pretty tough, and pretty tough for the people around you as well. And I think having a bit of stability, which he's had in his coaching, is really, really important. And so I think the coaching that he's done, I think, has been amazing and probably really, really impactful as well. It's one of those things where you can look and go, I'd love to coach more, senior players in professional clubs or in maybe the MLS over there or whatever. But again, I'm not sure that would have been the right thing to do.
And what you just said there in my head, I was thinking about the amplification effect of a brilliant person, and actually he's probably had more of a halo effect. He talks about him managing 50 teams in Orlando. Think of the young people that he's impacted, either through the power of sport or through the power of just putting an arm around them and talking to them for half an hour. That's incredible. And when you really sort of think about the impact he would have had on humanity, it's brilliant that one person's done that. I mean, look, we're coming to sort of the end. What do you think the biggest lesson that Paul's taught you that you'd like other people to know?
Again, I think it's probably about discipline, really. I think a lot of people will, from the outside, they'll judge professional sports people in a certain way, and part of that is jealousy. I think it is the truth. But I think people don't or forget to understand that these players, even when they've seemingly been around for a long time, they're incredibly young. You think of a footballer who's 23, 24, 25, and I think back to myself at 23, 24, 25. I was a kid, I was so much I didn't understand, and these people are really in the public eye, and they've got a lot of pressure on them, and I think they don't get enough credit for that, and credit for the things that they have to do behind closed doors and away from the game, and the sacrifices they need to make. There's a human aspect to it that people forget, and that's not just sport. It goes across other industries that are in the spotlight. But I think often we don't sit back and kind of humanize the people that are maybe on a field, or they're on TV or something like that. I've heard some people in the stands calling my brother some incredibly rude things that I won't repeat. But yeah, there's a human aspect that I think people forget.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right to bring business into it, because I think even with you've started your own business before COVID hit, worst possible time. And people just see the sort of veneer of what's on LinkedIn and doing really well. And they probably sometimes forget what's actually going on, and the late nights and the 7 days a week and the sacrifices you've made. So I really like that. I think that's really important for us all to remember that everyone's got something going on.
Yeah,
however great the mask is. So yeah, that's really important.
It's so true, and we could get a little bit deep into this, but we've all seen how mental health has affected a lot of people, particularly in recent years. And I think particularly since COVID as well. I think that's had a big impact on people's mental health, and it's another thing. Again, it's another podcast, but it's another thing I'm very passionate about. It is, and particularly men's mental health as well. And we all know people who, front facing, they look fine. The veneer's absolutely fine. It's all great. And I was at an event only this week, which was a golf day for Ricky Hatton's as a fitness brand. A few days after he passed away, and he was someone who was pretty open about his struggles with mental health after he'd finished his sport. And again, I think that is touching on something else. Is we forget, once these people leave the public eye, that they've got a lot of their life ahead of them, and the thing that's actually that's been the thing that's driven them for really their whole life, is their whole identity is gone, and nothing in your life will ever get there again. It won't. You just can't. And you go, this ain't ever going to happen again, and that's a tough realization to make, and you've got to find some kind of purpose. And there's sports people that just don't, and not just sports people, actually. It goes across others, but it's a timely example, I think, of how these things can affect people.
Yeah. Oh man, we could talk, because it's people leaving the military, it's people leaving the police. I mean, my dad was a police officer for 32 years.
Wow.
What happens to your identity the day after you stop being Sergeant Griffiths? Yeah, and that's all you've known for 32 years. It's a really important point, actually. And business people as well, stopping retire. I'm not the CEO anymore. No one's listening to me. So I think it's really good. But again, I come back to Paul. I think back that he just went and found his purpose. He didn't dwell on the fact that his career's over. He went out and started inspiring other people. He really sounds like a brilliant guy. And one of the things you talk about, men's mental health, I think what we're getting better at doing is talking about it, and also reaching out to people and telling people we love them. I think that is going to be so important. In the spirit of that, my final question is, what would you like to say to Paul, your brilliant human, thinking about all the things we've just talked about?
Give me a call, because we need to talk more often. It is the truth, actually. I'm fortunate, and that's both of us, actually. We obviously don't get the opportunity to see each other as much as we'd like to now, not at all. And even though you can do things like this, which is great, the kind of technology that we have, we don't catch up with each other enough. And again, as you get older, you think about these things more, don't you? You think about as time rolls on, and actually, I was thinking the other day, kind of thinking, okay, he's not going to be coming back to the UK, again. I'm not likely to be moving to the US. So how many times are we really going to see each other? It's a horrible thought, actually.
But it's so important.
The reality is, how many more times are we going to? My mum said to me the other day, "Stop, Paul's coming back in November for a week." I was like, "Great," but it's not going to happen that often, unfortunately. But it's a shame. But that's the world we live in. Isn't
it? There you go. I think that's a really nice place to end, because it's, don't just think about sending the message. Send the person a message. Just say, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. Do you know I really admire you, and I just wanted to say I love you, and thanks you did this for me." I mean, that it takes 30 seconds. Everyone can find time to do that. And you're right about the sort of how many more times. And you go, okay, well, if I see my mum and dad, I don't know, 4 times a year, and then you kind of work that out, it really kicks you into, and it's habit. It's habit. It comes back to habits. Make it a habit to show gratitude, to tell people you care about them, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. So I think that's a really perfect way to finish. Steve, I mean, we've covered a lot there. We could probably talk for hours more about sports and resilience and mental health, but I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's been so great to see you. And hopefully you can come back and talk about some other people as well.
Love to. Thanks, John.
Thanks so much, Steve. Take
care. Work.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brilliant Humans podcast. If you've got a brilliant human you'd like to celebrate, then email us at brillianthumanspodcast@gmail.com to find out how to share their story. Or, if you've got someone you'd simply like to thank, why not tell them now? It might just make their day. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to follow, like, or leave us a comment. It really helps more people discover these brilliant stories. See you next time.